Only the shadow knows. Prayer Man, More Than Just a Fuzzy Picture by Bart Camp. Prayer Man is a term coined a few years ago by Sean Murphy. It's about the discovery of a person who happens to stand in the shadow of the far west end corner of the front entrance of the Texas School Book Depository, while JFK was assassinated in Dallas on November 22, 1963. He has the appearance of someone we all may have heard of, Lee Harvey Oswald. In this movie, in conjunction with the multi-touch software, I will highlight its history and development, the people who took the images, a few of the people that stood on the steps of the Texas School Book Depository, some employees inside the building, and the ones involved investigating this case, as it is about more than just a fuzzy picture. This picture is just an addition besides the mountain of evidence that is available at this time. The reason I decided to write this book, build a website, and create this movie utilizing this software was to try and to simplify this complex issue for everyone, since this part of the case requires intermediate, if not advanced knowledge of the JFK assassination. What I intend to present is the result of collaborative research. Since Sean Murphy left, Greg Parker and the core group of the ROKC Forum have been responsible for further research. We, the members, have been hard at work trying to progress the investigation of this case by trying to get better images, re-investigating the evidence, and find significant new leads. It is the boxed-in situation of Prayer Man that makes it ideal to recognize and analyze this part of the massive JFK puzzle with a devastating conclusion. Lee Harvey Oswald was downstairs on the front steps when JFK got murdered, and he is Prayer Man. Keep checking prayerman.com or the ROKC forum at reopenkennedykcase.org for further updates. Okay, let's talk camera. What you're looking at is a diagram of Dealey Plaza, of Houston Street and Elm Street, and the rough positions of the camera people taking footage that contain the front steps. The front steps are marked in red, by the way. I'll start showing their work according to level of importance. First of all, we've got Charles Bronson. Bronson photographed the front steps twice, but he did it way in advance of arrival of the motorcade and after, so it wasn't of much use. Then we've got Jack Weaver's Polaroid. In Weaver's Polaroid, we can see Jay Skaggs opposite, right there. And in the FBI version of this bit of the Polaroid, we can see the front steps, and we see a couple of individuals who are holding their arms up, trying to block out the sun. And that's as far as it goes. In between Weaver and Bronson, there's Robert Hughes. Robert Hughes' film has been used in a lot of documentaries. And you can see the limo turning onto Elm Street while it's got its view of the front entrance. Hughes had a good vantage point, but at the same time, it looks like somebody in blue is blocking out the entrance. I'll get back to that in a second. What we can see though, and this is a still from the Hughes film, this is from Life magazine. In this circle, we can see Billy Lovelady and Roy Edward Lewis standing in the front entrance, right there. And let me just show you Billy Lovelady's shirt in color. That's Billy Lovelady's shirt. This is shot years later for the HSCA. Now coming back to the lady in blue. The lady in blue Hughes may have been blocking the front entrance, but not for Mark Bell, as you can see. She's standing there with somebody else on a pedestal. The problem with the Bell film is that the front entrance is mainly blacked out by a tree. What you can see is the individuals that are standing on the curb of Elm Street, like Stetson Man, for instance. Then we got Tina Towner. Tina Towner was in a prime position to film the limo and actually capture Prayer Man, but she didn't. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, she shot it at 8mm, and that didn't help much from a quality point of view. Add on that she was panning the limo, so the focus was on the limo and everything else in the background. The people standing on the curb of Elm Street, nor the people in the background on the front steps of the Texas School Book Depository are in focus. As a matter of fact, they are all heavily blurred. Some people think that there's a paint job happening on that dark area of the front steps as such, but the quality of that isn't consistent. I've checked out various frames and it varies on all of them. So the quality of the film simply does not allow for any proper recognition of that area. Even the people in front of him, of Prayer Man, are just hardly recognizable. And in some of the frames you can just discern elements of Billy Lovelady's shirt, but that's about it. Tinatown handed all rights to the 6th Floor Museum of her film, and they've made 4K scans of it, but I've not heard or seen anything more about these scans since the announcement in February 2015. Okay, Ike Olgins took 6 frames of the motorcade, and his most important one is called Olgins 6. That's this picture. That picture is being used in various front pages of newspapers in different crops. Olgins himself, you can see here to the right of Jackie Kennedy behind her, raising his camera. And after the assassination, got a really good ROKC scan here, where he's standing just staring out behind the Newmans. Now, what's important about Olgins 6 is that there are many facets we can discuss, but we're only going to discuss one bit, and that's the entrance and the steps of the Texas School Book Depository, which is this bit here. Now, I'm just going to grab an enlargement of the House Select Committee on Assassinations, which is this one. Over the years, people managed to recognize and name the individuals on those steps. So, first of all, we've got Billy Lovelady. Now, I'm not going to go into this debate about whether it's Oswald or Lovelady. That's been settled years ago, decades ago to be precise. Some researchers still like to debate this, but they end up talking to themselves. The FBI went that very same evening with a table-sized print to Lovelady and put it in front of him, and he recognized himself. Lovelady's supervisor, boss, Roy Truly, confirmed it as well. So did Bill Shelley. Bill Shelley's standing next to Billy Lovelady. Bill Shelley was the supervisor of Oswald and Lovelady. And Roy Edward Lewis. Roy Edward Lewis is standing below Billy Lovelady. Yeah, he was wearing sand-colored clothes. To the right of Shelley and Lovelady are Joe Molina and Otis Williams. They worked in the accounting department of the Texas School Book Depository. As you can see, they both wear white shirts, office workers. And then a little bit lower on those steps is Sarah Stanton. Sarah Stanton is largely obscured by the Secret Service agent and his arm, but you can see a black hat just underneath the lettering Otis Williams, the black hair, and then the rest of the black outfit of Sarah Stanton. To the right and below of Sarah Stanton was Madeline Reese, who worked in the Texas School Book Depository as well. So did Sarah Stanton, by the way. Olgins' material was barely used, like a lot of other stuff by the Warren Commission. And on top of that, their opinions weren't asked. The FBI begrudgingly called them up for testimony. Only at the very end that they really had to, got to a point where go like, either do it now or you won't be able to. The first discovery of Prayer Man is in the Dave Wheatman film. He was in Cam Car 1, and when he heard the shots, he jumped out of the car. When the third shot rang out, as he thought the car wasn't moving fast enough to get down to where the action was, namely the grassy area. And with his finger on the trigger, his camera swerved to the right twice and captured the front steps of the schoolbook depository. These are the Weekmans. That's the rest of the motorcade, and he turns his camera back again. Now, our focus, of course, goes to the snippet of where he swerves the camera to the right twice and captures the spectators on the curb of Elm Street and, of course, the front entrance. Now, we at ROKC have managed to get some high-end scans of the film. The problem with the film is that this is a 4th or 5th generation. The guy on the right that you see here on the left of the screen is being named Stetson Man. Okay, now our focus goes to this group. As you can see, we got Maddie Reese on the bottom with her right hand shielding the sun. Then to the right, on the above her, is Sarah Stanton. Above Sarah Stanton is Billy Lovelady. And Otis Williams is standing underneath the number 3. We can see Roy Edward Lewis as well, the African American, standing all the way on the bottom and to the left. And then underneath the number 1, we can see a faint figure. And that's as good as it gets for the Weekman film. Enlarged and enhanced. That's an enlargement of this figure. That is Prayer Man. It's important to know that we recognize Billy Lovelady in the same movie as Prayer Man. And we'll get to that in a minute. This is a picture where a lot of people falsely assumed that the guy in the black outfit and the grey hat, this guy, is Roy Truly. But that's not correct. And I'll point that out later. How comes? Why that is. A little bit of history I want to add on to this, and that's basically Richard Bernabe was a professor in Kingston, Ontario, and he started discussing with Harold Weisberg about seeing a shadowy figure next to Lovelady, or whether Lovelady is Oswald, or vice versa. The bottom line is that he sees the person that ought to be Lovelady, which is our number 2 here. But he also sees the number 1, and that's important because a lot of people think that it all started with Sean Murphy, but that's not the case. Actually, in the late 60s, there were 3 people, Harold Weisberg, but more, Richard E. Sprague, and also Richard Bernabe, who were discussing this. That discussion you can find in the Weisberg archive, and I will be reporting about this extensively in my upcoming book. But the trail went dead. They talked about it over a period of about a year, from say summer 67 till about autumn 68, and that was about it. Then it went quiet for decades. For some strange reason, nobody else delved into it. Malcolm Couch. Malcolm Couch was in Camp Car 3 in the middle of the back seat of the car, squeezed in between Jimmy Darnell and Bob Jackson. When Couch filmed while they were standing still on the corner of Houston and Elm, his camera swerved to the right, but it didn't really capture the front steps and Prayer Man. And although he did not go as far to capture those front steps, he did capture some valuable snippets that provided great insights, which were widely discussed in 2012. On the right, you see Couch sitting next to Bob Jackson while they're going down Elm Street. Jimmy Darnell had left the car by then. Now, this particular snippet, this is what we're talking about. Now, I've got some still photos of that bit of film. And first of all, I've got Marion Baker making a dash for the front steps as such. And furthermore, we've got Roy Edward Lewis right here, who stood on the bottom of the front steps and basically made his way down to that traffic sign, grabbed it with his left hand, and more or less stood on his toes to look down Elm Street to see what was happening. But more importantly is the discovery of Bill Shelley and Billy Lovelady, who had left the steps. And that's quite a troubling find, because it refutes their Warren Commission testimony. In their Warren Commission testimony, which seemed to be pretty much in sync with each other, where Billy Lovelady stated that they stayed up to 3 minutes on those steps. Well, this snippet of the film shows clearly that Lovelady and Shelley had left the steps 15 to 20 seconds after the final headshot. There's a bigger close-up. And this is quite important to know, because if you start comparing the Wiegman, the Couch, and the Darnell film, then these discoveries are very important as to who could actually could be Prayer Man. Because, as I'm going to show you in the next bit, Prayer Man's still standing there, but Shelley and Lovelady are not, and therefore they can be discounted as such. This find of Shelley and Lovelady was by Gerda Dunkel in 2012. The majority of the material I'm showing you are all finds from 2012 and 2013 up till now, up to recently actually. So we're looking only at about 3 to 4 years of proper research into this matter. Couch was interviewed for the Warren Commission, for the Warren Report, and it's surprising how often David Bellin actually asks whether he has covered anything in his film about the front steps of the schoolbook depository, the entrance. It's quite surprising actually. I think it's about 4 or 5 times. Jimmy Darnell. Jimmy Darnell made the best shot of Prayer Man. And this snippet of that was shown first at the documentary called Beyond JFK, The Question of Conspiracy. He captures Marion Baker making a full-on dash towards the front steps of the Texas Schoolbook Depository. You can't see him going up the steps because the camera is already turning back to the left as such. The other discovery that couldn't have been made with Couch is the fact that we have Roy Truly, who looks up and basically sees Marion Baker going past him as such. Now I want you to pay attention to this while the movie is actually playing. Let's just enlarge this. You can see him the second he realizes that the police officer is going into the Texas Schoolbook Depository, of which he's the superintendent. He makes a turn to the right and he follows him. You can see in the very last frames. What you can also see is when you look at the traffic sign that you see in the middle of the film, Roy Edward Lewis is using it and grabs it with his left arm and raises himself to look down the Elm Street. Now, I asked Ed Ledoux to make me a copy of what Gerda Dunkel did. Gerda Dunkel's copy was too small. So what he did is he sandwiched Darnell and Couch together. And as you can see, Couch starts further on the right but makes his way to the left, whereas Darnell goes further to the right and manages to capture the front steps in its full glory. And Prayer Man, of course. So let me just show you. This is a fuzzy enlargement of Prayer Man as such. There's only 1 or 2 frames where you actually can have some sort of sharpness happening. But what's really important as well is that, let me just call up some stills. There you go, Baker. This is important. Okay, first of all, we've got Truly and Baker right here. That's Gloria Calvari, who ran back to the Texas Schoolbook Depository. She was close to Elm Street, where the shooting was happening. Now, That's Prayer Man. That's Buell Frazier. That's Joe Molina. And these are all women. It's Maddie Reese and Sarah Stanton are standing there as well. So, but what's more important is the fact that, as you can see, the people on the steps on the bottom left, and I'm talking about this group here, they're all making their way back up the stairs. And they are only able to do so because, first of all, Roy Edward Lewis had left. Shelley and Lovelady had left as well. And on top of that, Otis Williams had gone back inside the building because he went up to the fourth floor to check what was going on because he wanted to know. He thought the shots were coming near the underpass and he wanted to see what was happening. This is a very important fact. Let me just enlarge this bit. They're all standing with our backs. Now, if you look to the right of the lady with the white top and the white hair, you can see a dark leg stand out and a foot on those steps. And that's another person. It's very hard to discern, but hey, there's a person. Basically blends in with Prayer Man. We're talking about that bit over there. Donnell got out of the car straight after when he took these shots and basically ran down the grassy area. You can see him here on the left. This is from a snippet from Couch where he's running down while Couch is sitting in the car filming. He's running down the grass and he ends up filming the people from opposite where Wiegman was. And as you can see on the bottom right, there's the press bus going past. He then joins Roger Craig and they run up the stairs and he starts filming in the railroad yard. Donnell was interviewed by Richard Sprague in 1968 for the Garrison investigation, but he didn't add anything with regards to Prayer Man or the front of the Texas School Book Depository. I think they were more interested in what was happening behind the picket fence because he was one of the few filmmakers that actually did so. I called Donnell and he couldn't tell me where his film was. And I tried to ask him a few more questions, but he wasn't interested in talking, which is a pity. This concludes our camera section. Okay, let's talk about the people of the Texas School Book Depository. I'm going to talk about this in two parts. The first part is about some of the characters that worked inside the Texas School Book Depository. And the second part will be about the power of deduction that Richard Hawking and Sean Murphy applied, and why Prayer Man is Lee Harvey Oswald. So I'm going to talk about the people only in the briefest form. I'm going to go much more into depth in part 2 of the movie. So we're going to start with Roy Truelly. Roy Truelly was the superintendent who walked in with Marion Baker. And on the top photo, you can see him talking to Baker and other police officers as such. It's quite strange because in Baker's sworn commission testimony, he more or less said that he left Truelly down there after they went down on the elevator. He said, yeah, I left him down there and basically went outside and got on my motorbike and went towards Parkland Hospital. Here in this bit, there's a footage of him and he shot by Alyea, and he's just nattering about with Truelly and the others. Strange thing. It's a direct contradiction to his evidence. Well, that's not the only thing, but we'll get back to that later. Truelly was a peculiar person as well. He's right wing, he's a racist, he used the N-word, and he stood on the steps with Orcus Campbell at first, but he left him to go closer to the turning of Houston and Helm near the curb. And he's caught on camera in Darnell, and where he basically makes a turn while Baker is blazing past him. Now, what's important to note is that a lot of people at first, in the last few years, thought that that is Roy Truly, but they couldn't be further removed from the truth. Because according to Linda Giovanna Zambanini, she made an excellent find, is that Roy Truly is that. There's a few reasons for this. First of all, to his right or left, you see a row of ladies, and all these ladies have been identified as working for the Texas School Book Depository, whereas the lady standing to the guy on the left of this picture cannot be connected to the Texas School Book Depository. On top of that, and this is really small detail, but is the fact that the guy on the right has got a dark gray to black hat, whereas the guy on the left has got a gray hat as such. There we are. There's the black hat. Truly is here with Baker. Baker comes out the face of Stetson Man. He just about to pass Truly as such, with Prayer Man in the background. And here he makes the turn towards the front steps. Let's go to the next one. So August Campbell. August Campbell was basically Truly's boss. And August Campbell made some peculiar statements with regards finding Oswald in the storage room on the first floor after he and Mrs. Robert Reed, remember that name, arrive inside the building. Campbell made some statements towards Kent Biffle and the newspapers that were publishing articles on the 23rd. And, in that he indicates that he knew who Oswald was. Whereas in the statements that he made, he just goes, didn't know him, didn't know of him, Truly was taking care of that, blah, 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 and taking his distance of him. And if we look at the front steps, of course we've got Prayer Man in Wiegman, in Darnell. And this is a pretty cool Wiegman one. It's got like a really nice set of contrast actually. You can see Lovelady to his right. Okay, so that's Prayer Man. Then we got Buell Wesley Frazier. I just want to show you a couple of really cool scans that we managed to get at NARA a few weeks ago. And this is all of Frazier being in the corridors of the Dallas Police. That's a stand-in graphic with Oswald's face next to Prayer Man and Buell Wesley Frazier on the right. Buell Wesley Frazier recognized himself in 2014 in that picture. He said it was him. Frazier was treated quite harshly. He was picked up while he was at a hospital visit, taken to the police station. After a while, when they found out that he took Oswald to work quite a few times, they basically Captain Fritz put a statement in front of him where it had to sign, which basically said that he was an accomplice in the assassination. And of course, even though he was 19 years old, he refused to sign it, after which Will Fritz raised his arm as if he wanted to hit him. Then he got interrupted. Then when Frazier was basically being dropped off home, just before he got dropped off home, they hauled him in again. And they submitted him to a lie detector test. To this day, the results of that lie detector test are unknown. Bill Shelley. Bill Shelley was basically, I've got some moving footage here. This is Shelley accompanying Denny Arca Garcia and Bonnie Ray Williams. This is him sitting in the car on the very right, with Bonnie Ray Williams in the middle, in the back seat, and Denny Arca Garcia on the left. That's Shelley getting some coffee. This is a picture just when they left the Texas School Book Depository. I think it's a William Allen shot. This is a very large rest that we managed to get as well. It's kind of funny that you can see Bonnie Ray Williams has got dust on his shirt. Bonnie Ray Williams was leaning outside the window on the 5th floor. But as you can see, Bill Shelley's got a very distinctive haircut and face. Very slim. Shelley been working there since the war. High school photo. There's a lot to be said about Shelley, but I'm going to save that for the second film. Then we got Billy Lovelady. And Billy Lovelady is an extremely interesting person, not just because of the so-called Oswald Lovelady caper that's some researchers love to keep on haranguing about. Lovelady was of course caught in this picture. He's also caught in this shot, which is a still shot from the movie, when Oswald's basically been arrested and paraded through the corridors and moved into an interrogation room. And Lovelady's sitting there waiting, and he sees Oswald being walked past as such. You can see that Oswald's shirt is just hanging off his left shoulder. This is Lovelady and Beekman. This is Lovelady outside the front steps of the Texas School Book Depository. You can see his bald patch as well, which you saw earlier in the arrest shot. It's funny that when you look at the statements of Shelley and Lovelady, neither makes a mention of Oswald in any shape or form. That's Lovelady's shirt he was wearing for the HSCA 12, 13 years later. He gained more weight and had a tash. And this picture you've seen before, that's Lovelady and Shelley making their way down towards the west of the Texas School Book Depository. There's one thing I want to add, and that's this bit. This is from the Warren Commission, and it says, "You ate your lunch on the steps?" "Yes, sir." "Who was with you?" "Bill Shelley and Sarah Stanton." "And right behind me?" "What was that last name?" "Stanton." "What is the first name?" "Bill Shelley." "And Stanton's first name?" "Miss Sarah Stanton." "Did you say on the steps?" "Yes." And when you look at this, the person that was right behind him doesn't get a mention. Now, that could be Oswald or Prayer Man, but it also could be Pure Wesley Frazier. It just depends on how you look at it. But the bottom line is that you get the feeling that Joseph Ball is trying to steer away from this bit. It's almost like, and there's certain instances inside the Warren Commission testimonies that whenever there's a mention of what's happening actually on the steps, they get steered away from it as such. Roy Edward Lewis, really quick, African American. As you can see here, wearing sand-colored clothes. That's him, Beekman. That's him there near the traffic sign. Right there. That's him out of Larry Sneed's books. No More Silence. And we can see him here standing, this is in the aftermath afterwards. Actually, Howard Brennan is being interviewed inside this car. And there's a few Texas School Book Depository employees. And Roy Edward Lewis is right there. Okay, then we get the two accountants. Number one is Joe Molina. He's the guy who basically raised both of his arms in this picture. That's him 25 years later. Joe Molina was in really rough treatment. I'm going to keep this really brief, but the bottom line is that the cops came at 2-3 a.m. after the assassination, had a search warrant, wanted to check him out because he was part of a forum called the American GI Forum, where basically a lot of Latin American ex-World War II soldiers would get together, and they were basically trying to get better rights for Hispanic people as such. The Communist Party, it's known that the Communist Party had infiltrated that place. And when Joe Molina was voted boss of that lot, they wanted him to become a party member, but he didn't want to have anything to do with it. Now, in those days, it's like saying like ISIS has infiltrated, some veterans group, and they want you to become part of that. So they'll flag you for that. The Molina had to come in the next day for an interrogation. While he was being interrogated, Dallas Police Chief Jesse Curry let slip that they were interviewing Joe Molina, who was regarded as a subversive, and that opened a whole can of worms for him. And he basically was let go of about a month after the assassination itself. He got 3 months full pay, 3 months half pay, and a Christmas bonus, and that was it. And he was out. And he ended up wanting to sue the police department as such for what they did to him, because his reputation was in tatters as such. But he did manage to get himself on his feet again. But more about that in the second movie. And then we got Otis Williams. Is it? Sorry about that. Otis Williams. That's Otis Williams there wearing his jacket. You see Roy Edward Lewis there on the right sticking his head out. That's Otis Williams there. He had like a pot belly. That's him in Larry Sneed's book. No More Silence. And that's Williams right underneath Joe Molina. Williams is looking in a different direction. It's looking like at the cars that are about to turn the corner as such. And this is a picture from his days when he was working for the Texas School Book Depository. Now, as you can see, he was wearing a white shirt. Always neatly dressed. Williams himself, as per his depositions for the Dallas Police Department and his FBI statement, basically, he went back into the building straight after the shots were fired. He went up to the 4th floor via the back stairs. If anyone should have encountered someone coming down those stairs, it would have been Otis Williams as such. The funny thing is he didn't even encounter Victoria Adams and Sandra Stiles either. So it's very strange. Okay, now, since we've looked at all these people, we're gonna, the main characters of who are standing just in front of the stairs or on the stairs, male-wise, we're gonna look at a level of deduction, and we're gonna apply this. Now, what we know is that there are 79 people working for the Texas School Book Depository. Now, what's important is here is I'm going to go through color codes. And what is important to know is, first of all the females are in red or in bold red. The bold red are the ones that were standing near the Texas School Book Depository, near the steps, or were standing on those steps as such. So they can be deducted right away, all the red ones. Then the blue ones, they represent all the Hispanic and the African American ones. They can be deducted as well because we've got Prayer Man to be a Caucasian. But what's more important as well, we know he's a Caucasian, but he doesn't look like an office worker either. Now, if we add on the people that weren't there or were working in the North Houston warehouse or were sick day off or sick at home or had gone out for lunch, a mile away from the actual Texas School Book Depository, or were actually inside the building but were on the 5th or on the 4th floor and so forth. These are all basically marked as black on white. So that leaves only 8 individuals, which I have here in yellow. Now, from these 8 people, I can deduct 4 immediately. With the knowledge that I've already passed on, is that we can delete Roy Truly, number 70. Number 62, William Shelley, because he left the steps with Billy Lovelady. The other guy we can delete is Billy Lovelady. He left the steps as well. Furthermore, we can delete Bill Wesley Frazier because he's standing next to Prayer Man in Darnell. Billy Lovelady stood next to Prayer Man in Viekman. And the 5th person, I did say 4, but it's the 5th person that we can already delete, is Ockus Campbell. He stood next to Roy Truly at the curb of Elm Street. So that leaves in the end only 3 people that could be a candidate for Prayer Man. And that's Lee Harvey Oswald, number 51. Joe Molina, number 47. And Otis Williams, number 79. Now, I pointed out the looks of Molina and their positions of Molina and Otis Neville Williams. And those two, Williams and Molina, wore white shirts. They were working as accountants for the company. So no way they would wear a rough looking shirt like what Prayer Man would be doing. Right there. See where it says JM, that's Joe Molina. Williams by that time had also gone already back into the building. So that actually reduces the chance of Prayer Man being Williams as such even further. So that only leaves you one person. Lee Harvey Oswald. Let's look at it from a different perspective. Let's look at the people that were just on the front steps, that claimed they were on the front steps. And let's look at what their gender, the color, and their jobs. And then it's quite easy to deduct and see that Lee Harvey Oswald actually is Prayer Man. Now this sounds really simple, and it probably is. But let's just talk about, say, arguments against Oswald being Prayer Man. Okay, well, for starters, 2 years ago, the lone nutters and the deniers basically said, that's a stranger. Well, that's really weird, because first of all, that stranger seems to be communicating with Buell Frazier. So if anyone should know, Buell Frazier should know. Buell Frazier was interviewed, and he said he didn't see any strangers. Okay, so that's one thing. On top of that, regarding the stranger element, as you can see here on the right in the green column, we got to thank J. Edgar Hoover for this, because he put the statement with 6 questions for every person that was working there. He did it for 73 people. And one of the questions was, did you see any strangers? And they all said no, except Danny Aker Garcia. Danny Aker Garcia helped an 80-year-old man 45 minutes before the big event to get to the lavatory. And he escorted him back out, and he saw him get in a car with 3 elderly ladies, and he saw the car disappear underneath the triple underpass. So the bottom line of it is that there's no one that was actually seen in that building that was a stranger. The other argument that a lot of the deniers put forward is the fact that no one claimed they saw Oswald on those steps. First of all, Oswald came probably out last, or one of the very last people. Number 2, he was standing in the shadow. Number 3, what you have to realize is that Oswald was thrown under a bus a few hours after his arrest. I'll get more into this about the interrogation section. Now, when people are being classified as a communist, and especially someone like Oswald who's been in the Soviet Union for 3 years, your colleagues who have only known this man for a month distance themselves from this person right away. It's like saying you're working in an office and you've had somebody new and you go through a similar experience, somebody gets shot in front of it and hardly anyone saw him on the steps, and on top of that, the ones that did know basically find out that this guy is related to ISIS. Most people will distance themselves from him anyway. And that's the thing, because look at Buell Frazier, how he got treated just for bringing Oswald in. Look at Molina, how he was treated just because there was a whiff of communism around him. Their reputation was shattered. What has also been added and discussed recently, and I think it's more of a wind-up because hardly anyone in the research community is buying this, is that Prayer Man is a woman. Well, I hate to disappoint you, but this looks anything but a woman. Furthermore, you can see the blur. See where the position of his ear is. His ear cuts all the way from the front of his hair to the back. I also think that due to the blur, his hair has been extended to the left as such. Because his ear, as you can see, his ear, it's like you see 3 or 4 ears next to each other. It's not a woman. If you think you do, I suggest you get your eyes checked. The Interrogation of Lee Harvey Oswald. I'm going to deal with this subject only in the broadest of terms. It will be more in depth in my book and also discuss more in part 2 of my book, this movie. Lee Oswald was interrogated for about 12 hours out of almost 46 while being incarcerated without any legal assistance for on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday morning. The lead interrogator was Captain William Fritz, chief of the Robbery and Homicide Bureau. Alongside Fritz, there were Secret Service agents present, but also FBI agents James Hosty and James Bookout. Hosty has probably been responsible for informing the Dallas Police Department of Oswald's past, his defection to Russia, which would make him a marked man from the word get-go. The second Oswald found out about who Hosty was, he confronted him for accosting Marina Oswald. Let me just show you a couple of exclusive pictures that we've managed to grab while at the archives. Okay, Captain Will Fritz. Fritz's investigations of Kennedy's murder was beyond a joke, and I'll give you a few samples. I'll keep it really brief. He failed to protect the crime scene because there's no pictures present of the so-called bag that was supposedly containing the rifle found near the sniper's nest. He misidentified the murder weapon as a Mauser or a .303 and let the world know about it. Now, I'm not saying that the rifle found at first was not a Mauser, but the way it was handled with the media was anything but professional and started off a rumor mill that even now has not stopped. Furthermore, there's evidence that he's picked up the shells in the sniper's nest, and after being made aware of that they weren't photographed as well, he tossed them back on the ground. That was anything but professional either, because of course it had his fingerprints on it and he contaminated the scene. Now, what's even more interesting is that for some remarkable reason, Fritz told everyone he never took any notes. But in 1997, the ARRB, the Assassination Record Review Board, published them in 1997. So Fritz had been lying and kept these notes covered up for 34 years and then some. But the biggest hammer is actually the fact that they're not his own notes at all. It seems that his notes are a copy of Special Agent James Bookout's notes. If you put his notes next to Special Agent James Bookout's, then you can see how phrases from Bookout's notes have been copied by Fritz. I'll go into more in depth about this in the book. But what I do want to address is also the fact that not did he just lie about the notes, he never made an attempt to record any of it, be it with sound, because that's really weird. Now, he said, of course, he has been saying that they didn't have any recording equipment. But then again, you've got the world's press jamming the corridors. Well, how much would it hurt you to ask any of these people to borrow some gear so you could record the conversations as such? Never. Any attempt was made as such. Now, what I want to discuss about the notes, though, is how they've been treated as such. And Sean Murphy came up with a really good find. This is the first page of the Fritz interrogation notes. Now, I want you to look at both columns, and the left column, the word saw, and on the right column, the word when. Now, Fritz didn't really use capitals to start off sentences, nor did he use periods for punctuation as such. So But the most important bit is that if you look at the word saw, you can see that it's slightly raised, because the sentence basically reads as didn't own rifle, saw, as one line. But it actually should read didn't own rifle, saw one at building, Mr. Truly and two others. So now we look at the one on the right. It says claims second floor coke when off came in to first floor, had lunch out with Bill Shelley in front. Okay, so however, if we look at it, that right sentence on the right, it should actually read claims second floor coke when officer came in to first floor, was having lunch out with Bill Shelley in front. So that's quite a significant change. The fact that these words are raised, they imply new thought. But if you look at the logic from the left column and apply it to the right column, then you understand what I'm trying to say. Is that he got the coke on the second floor, but when the officer, meaning Marion Baker, came in, he was on the first floor while having lunch outside with Bill Shelley in front of the building. Now, do you think like that may amount to something? So why don't we look at Harry Dean Holmes' testimony? First of all here, Warren Commission Exhibit 2064. If you look a little bit down, it says, before he could finish whatever he was doing, he stated, the commotion surrounding the assassination took place, and when he went downstairs, a policeman questioned him as to his identification, and his boss stated that he's one of our employees, whereupon the policeman had him step aside momentarily. Following this, he simply walked out the front door of the building. Right. Interesting. That doesn't state a second floor lunchroom encounter, does it? Holmes's Warren Commission testimony as such is interesting as well. The question here says by Mr. David Bellin, by the way, where did this policeman stop him when he was coming down the stairs at the book depository on the day of the shooting? He said it was in the vestibule. He said it was in the vestibule, or approaching the door to the vestibule. He was just coming apparently, and I've never been in there myself. Apparently there's two sets of doors, and he had come out this front part. Did he state it was on the what floor? First floor, the front entrance to the first floor. Did he say anything about a Coca-Cola or anything like that, if you remember? Seems like he said he was drinking a Coca-Cola standing there by the Coca-Cola machine, drinking a Coca-Cola. This is quite important. These are two statements by Harry Dean Holmes, where in both cases he mentions the first floor. Harry Dean Holmes, by the way, had a brilliant panoramic view of the whole thing happening that day. And here's a picture from Harry Dean Holmes. This is shot in about 20 odd years later, after it all happened. Like I said, I can go into real deep about this, but I'm going to spare everyone about this. I'm going to compare Bookhouse notes with Fritz's in the book, and the same goes with Hosey's involvement and Harry Dean Holmes's, and how it all basically turns out that Oswald was on the first floor when Marion Baker came in as such. So let's talk about the second floor lunchroom encounter. The encounter that never was. Now, before we start, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Texas School Book Depository, about the first floor and the second floor, so you familiarize yourself a little bit. If you look at the pictures, for instance, at this background, on the left, this is the vestibule. On your right, that door, for instance, that is the storage room. Those are stairs leading up to the second floor, right away when you arrive. On the left, you're seeing a sign. To the left of that sign is actually an elevator. Let me just point this out. We've got a brilliant drawing being given by by Baylor University. This is a Robert Cutler design. He made some really brilliant drawings, architectural drawings of Dealey Plaza, And sadly, he only has one of the first floor of the Texas School Book Depository. Now, the stairs you can see on the bottom right with an arrow just above 411 Elm, because that was the address. Then you see a door that swings both ways, and you see a lot of text that says passenger elevator, basement to the fourth. That area, where it says passenger elevator, basement to the fourth, that is the vestibule. You can see there are two doors above that swing outwards or inwards towards the vestibule, and behind that is a counter, because in this large area behind it, that's where basically all the shipping was done, where the books were weighed and packed up and so forth. Trolley and Shelley's offices to the right as such. The domino room to the right and then in the back. Now, as you can also see, there are several exit points. So anyone who was upstairs and wanted to come down and disappear as such had ample opportunity and actually spoiled for choice to basically say, this, I'm going to pick up this exit to get out of here. Now, what's more important is that in this vestibule, to your right, where it says passenger elevator, there's an elevator that goes from the basement to the fourth floor. And then to the right of that elevator are the stairs. Now, the closet that I just pointed out in the picture are of course underneath those stairs. So this is the vestibule, the stairs, and this elevator. I'm just showing you this so you're aware of what this looks like. Just a few pictures. As said before, there's the front steps. These are the stairs just inside. This is like the shipping area. I'm just going to show you a couple of pictures only, because they're not that important. Right, and this is basically shot from behind, going outwards through the glass door, down the stairs, and you can see the area right opposite the Texas School Book Depository. You see a bit of the grass as well in the distance. And there's a cigarette machine on the left. Very important. Okay, so that's the first floor. The second floor, let me just point this out really quickly, is a bit of a maze. Okay, first of all, these are the stairs from the back. These are the stairs from the front. That is the elevator. Okay, so the actual entrance to the front steps of the Texas School Book Depository are roughly around there. Okay, now these are freight elevators. Okay, now the famous lunchroom is this area. However, what's really important to note is this door. That door. And on top of that, there's a door here. So, if anyone comes up the stairs and basically when he comes up, he actually comes up the stairs here. Now, if he were to go up to the third floor on the stairs, which was what Truly did, he'd walk like this and go up the stairs like that. Now, the official story goes as follows. Truly goes ahead of Baker. Now, as stupid and Rambo-esque that may sound, that's what they said they were doing. So the possibility of a assassin coming down, yet Truly goes ahead of Baker, who's got his gun drawn. Why would you get drawn in a crossfire in the first place? And secondly, if there was a shooter coming down, you'd get shot first. I don't understand, but be that as it may. Now, if you look at the big blue blob, this is where Baker basically would come up, and he would basically turn left right away unless he saw something. Now, he claims he saw something. And when he says this door is at an angle. It's roughly at a 45-degree angle. So unless Baker goes in on the floor and goes deeper in this area and ends up being here, for then he can actually look straight through this door and straight into that living room, lunchroom as such. Yeah, and that's really important. The physical implications. See, if Baker stood at the first blue dot, let me just color it different. If he was standing here, then he would not be able to see anything that was happening inside that room. He would basically looking at a piece of cardboard, plasterboard as such. He would not be able to see through that door. Now, then you think like, but that's possible as such. Well, let me tell you something. This door is a pneumatic door. So it would make a noise. And on top of that, it would be closing. So for Oswald to be standing right behind the little tiny window of that door, which I will point out in a moment, he would have to be standing practically right behind it, or maybe a couple of feet away from it as such. So if you were only a couple of feet away from it as such, then the door would still be closing, because truly, as per his testimony, was already going up the stairs, up to the third floor as such. How far, I don't know, but he'd made his way up to the stairs on the third floor as per his testimony. So that really creates a problem, because Truly said he didn't hear anything, nor did he see the door close, and so forth. So this is quite a delicate situation as regards to how did he see it. Okay, let's get some pictures out. This is shot from inside the lunchroom going out. Now, if you look really through that glass, you see two lines of boxes, and you see also the height of those boxes. And that must have been at least between 5 and 7 feet high. 5 and 6 feet high, sorry. 5 and 6 feet high. So that poses a problem. But people can say, well, it could just get behind those boxes. Well, let's find out. So this is the original picture. This is the angle. As you can see, it would have had to peek past the pillar into that area. And as you can see, that is a plasterboard wall. Now, on top of that, as you can see how deep these boxes are. So basically, technically, Baker would have to go through these boxes and look over that pile to go through that window to basically see anything physically of Oswald being in that room. These are the stairs they're actually coming from. So again, this is shot from the other way. So where it says stairway, that's where Baker truly came up. And where you see that door open, where those stairs go up, that's where Truly was already going. And Baker was in pursuit of him. Now, from a physical point of view already, it shows that this is already very hard to put forward as such and say, no, this is what's happened. Now, other than that, there is a lot of evidence that says it didn't happen. So I'm going to list you a bunch of stuff that basically puts it into doubt that the actual lunchroom encounter on the second floor never happened as it's been described by Truly and by Baker. The first of all is Orcus V. Campbell. He's quoted in the Dallas Morning News together with Roy Truly. Now in that bit, basically Truly says that they saw Oswald in a storage room on the first floor. The officer, gun drawn, spotted Oswald. Does this man work here? The officer reportedly asked Truly. Yeah. In the New York Herald Tribune of November the 22nd, he's quoted as, "We saw him, Oswald, in a small storage room on the ground floor. Then we noticed he was gone." Now, what you also have to remember is that Campbell and Mrs. Robert Reed, who I pointed out earlier during the Texas School Book Depository chapter, they went into the building together. Detective Ed Hicks, he talked to the press on November the 22nd. Oswald was stopped at the front entrance by the police. The policeman asked him where he was going. He said he wanted to see what the excitement was all about. Remember? Commotion, excitement. Again. And it was near the front door. Baker gives an affidavit to Marvin Johnson while Oswald is being held in the same room to be taken for interrogation on November 22nd. In the affidavit, which is handwritten by Baker, there is no mention of a lunchroom encounter, and he describes the encounter as happening on the 3rd or 4th floor instead. This is quite important. There's no mention of the 2nd floor. Now, I could be wrong by a floor, but 2 floors, that's quite a bit. However, it gets better. Well, a lot of researchers don't apply because they say, like, well, you could have made a mistake. Yes, of course you could have made a mistake. But then the affidavit is actually typed out. Now, I don't know how much time there was actually in between the handwritten one and the typed one. But the bottom line of it is that he basically reconfirms what happened and basically says 3rd or 4th floor. But there's much heavier complications because of this. Marvin Johnson confirms the 4th floor encounter in his report and also mentions that Baker ID'd Oswald as that man on the 4th floor. So, like I said, Baker gives this interview to Johnson in full view with Oswald in front of him. He sees Oswald, but yet at no time in that affidavit that he gives, he says, that man sitting there is the guy I ran into in the 3rd or the 4th floor. So first of all, he sticks to the 3rd and the 4th floor. Yeah, 4th floor in Marvin Johnson's thing. But at the same time, there's no evidence to support this anywhere in Baker's statements. It is completely absent. That's Johnson in front of the Texas School Book Depository with one of the bottles they found upstairs, which is probably Bonnie Ray Williams' lunch. This time, in this affidavit, handwritten by Roy Truly. Truly says they go to the rear of the building to get a lift. Now, the addition of Mrs. Robert Reed's name underneath Roy Truly's DPD November 22nd affidavit is peculiar. It's like, make sure you talk to her as well, which is kind of weird because Ocas Williams went into the building with her together. Truly was already in the building. Truly gives a statement to the FBI as well that same night. And the really odd addition is that they saw no one there in front of the building. It raises an interesting question. And there's also no mention of going to the rear of the building with the elevator stuck on the 5th floor and them taking the stairs instead. Captain Fritz's report from November 22nd states that Baker identified Oswald in a lineup. And there is no evidence that this actually happened, nor is this repeated anywhere else. Jack Edwin Doherty, who is an employee of the Texas School Book Depository, placed himself on the 5th floor. He hears one loud bang, and he runs down the stairs to meet up with Eddie Piper, who's on the 1st floor, who says he heard 3 shots. And he takes the east elevator back up to the 6th floor afterwards. And this is quite odd, because he takes the elevator up. So he goes down via stairs, has a chat, and then takes the elevator back up. How did the elevator get back down in the first place? Because according to Roy Truly, they were both stuck on at least the 5th floor. One of them could have been a bit higher, but overall they were stuck up there. Roy Truly's typed statement to the Dallas Police Department from November the 23rd. He repeats the story as such, and it's from the handwritten statement. He was in the building, the Texas School Book Depository, that day, all day, and basically ended up staying there till late, and then, of course, did a deposition and an affidavit, and then, of course, went home, and then it got typed out the next day. There's nothing funny about that, besides that the story is just the fugazi. Now, Mrs. Robert Reed, who came in with Ocas Campbell, she gives a statement to the Dallas Police Department, and she says she sees Oswald in a T-shirt on the 2nd floor post-assassination, and says that he's carrying a Coke as such. The Coke is quite a funny thing. It's been seen everywhere and then nowhere, so it's rather odd. She could have possibly seen Oswald before the assassination, but not after, because it gets better. Geneva Hine, I'll get back to her in a second. Now, in this one, this is quite funny, because according to the official statements by Truly and Baker, is that they went up to the 7th floor and went up to the roof. But John Weissman's statement, Deputy Sheriff John Weissman's statement on November the 23rd, it says that the door to the roof was locked when he went up there. And he was like in when all the cops basically went in there, which is quite a strange discovery. Otis Williams stated in his FBI affidavit that on November 24th that he went straight back into the building after the shots and took the rear stairs to the second floor. That's quite an odd thing. So he must have gone before so-called Truly and Baker did this. But nor did he see anyone come down. He didn't see Oswald come down. You know, he took the rear stairs. He took the same stairs that Truly and Baker were taking. So if you were going in front of them two, he would have had to notice Oswald coming down the stairs as such. But he didn't. He even went to the fourth floor after that. I'll get back into that in a second. And then went down again. And he didn't see anyone. Vincent Drain made 2 reports on the 29th. And he stated that Truly observed Oswald on the second floor of the building. The second bit has an addition with regards to Jack Ruby. Overall, there's nothing suspicious about this. I just put this on. Just that is what's peculiar is that he makes 2 reports on the very same day. A December 1st, 1963 Washington Post article has Truly and Baker scrambling up the stairs to the second floor. Then while on the second floor, they make their way to the back stairs and in the process encountered Lee Harvey Oswald. Wolf Richard's report from December 23rd, that's quite peculiar, a month later, says, we also found out that this man had been stopped by Officer M.L. Baker while coming down the stairs. Mr. Baker says he stopped this man on the 3rd or 4th floor on the stairway. So a month after the fact. Fritz cannot get this fact straight. Now, Baker does the reenactment on March 20th in the year after, in 64. And it's fraudulent. The end results are shocking because his run is timed from the first shot, where it should start at least 10 to 15 seconds after the last shot instead. Then he gives his testimony, and this is first mention of the lunchroom encounter on the second floor. And this is the thing. So basically, Baker says nothing about this whole thing about the lunchroom encounter. Baker's first statement and his type statement are completely disregarded in the actual Warren Commission testimony. Nobody asks him to go, well, you wrote such and such down. Nor does Marvin Johnson get addressed about this at all. It's weird. Baker's testimony goes off the record 6 times. Truly testified on the 25th, the day after, and he said he knew nothing about Baker's having supposedly spotted movement through the door's window until a few days before he testified. He said Truly, I never knew until a day or 2 ago that he said he saw movement, saw a man going away from him. The strength. It just physically doesn't make any sense, especially if you keep in mind that Truly walked ahead of Baker. And of course, this is the thing that's been addressed by many people, and it's been addressed 20 odd years ago, and it's also in the JFK, the movie, is that Sandra Stiles and Victoria Adams, they descend from the 4th floor almost right after the shots have been fired. And Sandra Stiles saw the elevator cables move, and they were just clacking on their high heels coming down, didn't hear or see anything besides those cables move, went down, didn't encounter anyone, didn't encounter Oswald, didn't encounter Truly and Baker. They left the schoolbook depository via the back exit and basically walked around, went towards the area where the shooting was, then got told off by a policeman, say go back to where you came from. And they basically make their way back to the front, where they actually note quite a few people standing there. Victoria Adams is, I think, the only person that said that she saw Joe Molina on the front steps as such. Victoria Adams gives her statements, and she also testifies in front of the Warren Commission. Her testimony is completely disregarded. She's wrong, this, that, and the other. Bang, that's it. Sandra Stiles is not heard at all by the Warren Commission. Then we got Geneva Hine, I just mentioned her. She saw Reed and Campbell re-enter the second floor office area right after they came up the front stairs. And that contradicts Mrs. Reed's statement completely. This is a shot I saw in a documentary. I just put this up because it never happened. By the speed that Baker was going, as you can see in the Darnell film, Truly would have never been ahead of him. Baker must have been inside the building within a few seconds after he just descended that motorbike and just raced up the stairs, and then basically stood in that vestibule looking around. Now, this is my thing regarding the vestibule and the first floor elevator. Why didn't they take the first floor elevator? Why didn't they? It can only be that he was looking around, he was about to go up the steps, or he was about to go into the elevator, that somebody walked up to him, truly in this case, and say, yo man, that only goes up to the 4th floor. Let's go to the back as such. I not find any other explanation as such. Nowhere in the paperwork is there a mention of this elevator in the vestibule. On August 11th, 1964, Baker gives an affidavit to the Warren Commission. In this he states, during this reenactment, I reached the recessed door of the Texas School Book Depository 15 seconds after the time of the simulated shot. Which contradicts, of course, his reenactment. Now, the second floor lunchroom encounter, it has come in many shapes and in many colors as well. So it basically evolved from Oswald's in the lunchroom to Oswald is sitting at one of the tables. We've seen that in the reenactment. Oswald is leaning against the counter on the right over there. To Oswald is standing at the Coke machine sipping his Coke. Now, sipping his Coke, that proves an even bigger problem from a timing perspective, because first of all, he had to get his change out, he had to put it in the machine, then he had to get the Coke out, then he has to uncork the Coke. I don't know whether there were screw tops back then, but all extra seconds and time. And if he's sitting at the table, that's another thing. Now, there's evidence that basically workers weren't really, I wouldn't say allowed, but to sit down there wasn't really the thing to do. That canteen was reserved for office personnel only. So it's strange for him to be sitting there. Early accounts of Oswald drinking a Coke inside the second floor lunchroom. This is later omitted from any of the reports. And Oswald was drinking a Coke on the first floor. He said it himself. And that's on the front steps to be exact. Now I basically enlarged the picture there. You can see a bottle over there standing. And in front of that is a lunch sack as well. And I bet you 100 quid to say that's Oswald's butter and his lunch bag. Bonnie Ray Williams states that he saw a police officer come up on the elevator to the 5th floor, which means the officer did not take the stairs. That's quite a significant thing. More about Bonnie Ray Williams in part 2. Baker and Truly give statements to the FBI on September the 23rd, 1964, confirming no one else in lunchroom at time of encounter or 3rd floor and drinking a Coke are struck out. Now, this document was not written by Baker, but his initials are above the struck out bits and is also signed by him. However, it is most peculiar that the day before the Warren Commission serves its report to LBJ, Marion Baker has to give another statement, and so does Truly, after all the paperwork they've done already. So on September the 24th, the Warren Commission report is presented to LBJ. As part of the Garrison investigation, you have a conversation with Major Stavers Ellis, seen here shaking JFK's hand. And here Ellis says, the second part of the conversation was about one of Major Ellis's fellow motorcycle officers. This officer, as told by Ellis, stated that he was directly under the building when the shots were fired. They locked the main entrance, and after the supervisor arrived, he started up the stairs. The building was the book depository. Upon going up the stairs, he and the supervisor encountered someone on either the 3rd or the 4th floor, repeating basically Marion Baker's original statement. This person was drinking water from the water cooler. He did not stop because the supervisor advised the officer that the man was an employee. Major Ellis stated this officer later identified the man by the water cooler as Lee Harvey Oswald. This is a summation of the conversation. The House Select Committee of Assassination did an interview with Marion Baker, and after the so-called second floor lunchroom encounter, he states, I turned away and went up 2 more flights of stairs with Mr. Truly, so that would make him going up to the 4th floor. And that's wrong, because apparently, according to the official story, they went up to the 5th floor and then got a lift to go up to the 7th floor. But what's really interesting as well, it says here on the bottom of the middle page, it says, and on the top of the right one, later he was present on 3rd floor where Oswald was being questioned. He heard Oswald being asked, "Did you kill the president?" And Oswald answered, "That's absurd. I want a lawyer. I want a loyal lawyer." James Jr. Jarman told the HSCA that Billy Lovelady told him that Lee Harvey Oswald was stopped by an officer at the front entrance and vouched for by Roy Truly. So this is kind of funny that from how many different sources this whole first floor encounter is actually being told by several different people. In Crossfire by Jim Mars, Baker states, "As I entered this lobby, there was people going in as I entered, therefore contradicting Truly's remark that they said they saw no one there." And that's true. In the 80s, he talks to Larry Sneed for his book No More Silence. And in this he states, "So we continued up on the stairwell, up to the 6th floor and to the top." Okay. In the same book by Larry Sneed, Major Stafford Ellis claims Oswald was drinking a Coke. He also questions Baker's IQ to quite an extent. And that's true. He says, on the other hand, Baker wasn't real bright either. Before he went to Washington to testify to the Warren Commission, he went into Captain Lawrence's office and said, "Captain, I've got to go to Washington. Don't you think the city ought to buy me a suit?" Ain't that some bullcrap? I don't know why, but the boys called him Mama's son. But he was always slow. That's the reason I didn't have him in a responsible position on that escort. When I got the assignment from the chief to put somebody on the press bus, I put him there just to trail along. Otis Williams, in Larry Sneed's same book, No More Silence. I entered the building immediately, climbed up the back stairs back where the warehouse elevator was, which led to the 6th floor, and went up to the 4th floor, which was the first one I could see from the underpass. After I got up there and saw that nothing was going on the underpass, I turned around and came back to the office and called my wife. And then after that, he basically hangs up the phone because the cops come in and he sees Ockers Campbell and all the others come in. In the book First Day Evidence, this is beautiful. In the book First Day Evidence, released in 1993, Baker says, "Shortly after I entered the building, I confronted Oswald. The man who identified himself as a superintendent said Oswald was all right, that he was employed there. We left Oswald there and the supervisor showed me the way upstairs. I found nothing that seemed out of the ordinary, so I started back to see what had happened. Not knowing for sure what had happened, I was limited in what I could legally do." There you go. Now, the Martha J. Stone document. As I said earlier in the Texas School Book Depository chapter, there's Dorothy Garner with Victoria Adams and Sandra Stiles and Elsie Dorman. Now, there is absolutely no testimony from Dorothy Garner anywhere. But Barry Ernest, the author of The Girl on the Stairs, which is about Victoria Adams, he dug up this document where basically Martha J. Stroud writes a document. He sees the assistant United States attorney and basically writes the following sentence. "Mr. Bellin was questioning Miss Adams about whether or not she saw anyone as she was running down the stairs. Miss Garner, Miss Adams' supervisor, stated this morning that after Miss Adams went downstairs, she, Miss Garner, saw Mr. Truly and the policeman come up." So from a timing perspective, that's very interesting. So they didn't go up as quickly as they said. And like Victoria Adams also said, she didn't see Truly nor Baker. So, but the most disturbing thing about this whole thing is that, so Dorothy Garner was listened to, she was interrogated, or they took her deposition as such, but that deposition is nowhere to be found. So somebody made a mistake because they should have buried this document and they didn't. And Barry Ernest was very lucky that day. It was an amazing find. So, are you still wondering whether the 2nd floor encounter actually happened or not? The final chapter is about the search for the Weekman and Donnell films on the 6th floor museum at NBC5. I'm just going to call up the movies for starters. And then I'm going to get some stills in. It's going to turn it into a nice cluttered bunch. Not really. Let's get more lined up. Good. So, while the Darnell film is playing. Gary Mack plays an integral part in this chapter, and here's why. Gary Mack used to work for NBC5 before he started to work at the Sixth Floor Museum. The Jimmy Darnell film was shot while he was working for WBAP. WBAP later became KXAS, and that was to become part of NBC5 in Fort Worth. Dave Weekman used to work for NBC. Now, Gary Mack, by his own admission, said that both films were flown to New York that very same weekend, and the originals have never been seen again. They're locked away, so to speak. Richard E. Sprague made a mention about this on the Weekman film back in 1968 already. But NBC did sell copies, of which one was to the Hearst Corporation, UCLA. When Gary Mack was helping the makers of Death in Dealey Plaza, a DVD that came out about 10 years ago, they couldn't use the film that was actually at NBC Archives because the only thing they had was a videotape, and it's just an absolute nightmare to get a good watchable copy from that. So they went to UCLA to get a newsreel copy and basically used that version for the actual documentary. I've seen myself, and I purchased a VHS tapes box set that was released in 1988 by NBC, and it's called The Week We Lost Kennedy. And I managed to find the last remaining box set on Amazon about 3-4 months ago. I was still wrapped up in plastic. And tape 3 shows the Weekman film pretty clear and in very good contrast with a lot of detail. I'm going to get this ripped at some point to see if it can get anything half decent from it, but I've got my doubts due to the resolution of it. Mack also said that in March of 2015 that the Sixth Floor Museum had a first generation copy of the Darnell film. And this is what you're watching actually. This copy actually is a first generation copy, and it was used for the documentary Beyond JFK, The Question of Conspiracy. That was an extra that came with the actual film 20 odd years ago in like a double VHS cassette tape box set. Now, this is Gary Mack. Sadly, he passed away earlier this year. That's his workspace. I'm amazed at that old computer still, but and on the right, that's where he viewed the films. I have no idea how old that picture is, by the way. Now, this is Megan Bryant. She's the current curator of the Sixth Floor Museum. Now, this guy is quite important. This is Brian Hocker. Brian Hocker is the vice president of NBC5. He's the vice president of programming, research, and digital media, to be precise, at NBC5 in Fort Worth. And I've been in contact with him. I've had a phone call from him about a month ago, and I hope to get in touch with him soon again because there's quite a few questions I've got left. The main issue I've got right now is this is an article that came out 2 years ago, I think in October in 2013, where the anchor of NBC5's news news program, together with Gary Mack, are going down in the basement, and they are basically checking out all the film. What's astonishing is the way it's kept. It's just tossed into boxes, and we're talking not just videotape, but also reels of the film. I've been told that those reels have been transferred onto videotape, but that's not really what we're after. We're after the actual image from the reel direct, get a high-res scan instead of a videotape, because there's no point in getting a high-res copy of the videotape as such. I'm also amazed at in what conditions it's being kept. So, you can see these are video. That's Malcolm Couch, by the way. These are really fuzzy images, and they're probably directly from That's the Mormon Polaroid. Directly from the actual videotape instead of the reels as such. It's very easy to talk about trying to get a digitized copy of a 16mm film, but it's quite a laborious process. Not many companies in the States do it. You're also talking about a reel of film, not just a strip of negatives as such, which I'm able to myself to make copies of. But since you're talking about a whole reel, you can't cut up the reel in strips of say 6 and then start scanning it in, unless you're prepared to glue it all back, stick it all back together again. So there's still an ongoing thing about trying to find these images from the Weekman and the Darnell film. I've went through the videotape collection, and there was very little to be found of the entire Darnell film. There might be a snippet where there's footage of where they're filming the casket being loaded onto Air Force One from quite a big distance outside the fencing of the Love Field Airport. Whether that was Darnell remains to be seen. There's a story about that his film was confiscated as such because it was sacrilegious. So that whole thing, this is a bit of Weekman. The whole thing about finding these films is quite a mission. Plus the originals being gone, nobody knows where they are. And then there is the first generation copy of the Darnell film in the bit that I showed you just earlier about that's this bit. Now, according to Gary Mack, this is beautiful actually. Gary Mack used to converse with people. I've conversed with him at the Education Forum. Gary Mack used to private message or email with certain people that basically would make posts on the Education Forum in the JFK Assassination section. And he'd send a private message and say, it's not true, this, that, and the other, I know of this, that, etc., etc., because he had quite a bit of knowledge, of course. So at some point, he starts to write to Darren Hastings, and Darren Hastings gets an email from Gary Mack. And in this bit, there's two interesting bits, actually, in this letter. And it says that the Sixth Floor Museum has a first-generation copy. And this is March 2015. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting that you admit that you've got a first-generation copy as such. On top of that, he also says that they took 4K scans of the Tina Turner film. It seems to be a really slow and laborious process to get copyright sorted out and actually bring it out in the news. Before you know it, you're 2-3 years ahead. Further, and the question is like, why is it taking such a long time? Because you've already got the 4K scans in your possession. So but I wasn't really fussed about the 4K scans because again he says like, you can't see anything with regards to Prayer Man. Well, I'd like to see it for myself for starters. That's one thing. The other thing is just basically them admitting that that the Sixth Floor Museum has the first generation copy of the Darnell film. So while being on Twitter, I send out a message to the Sixth Floor Museum and says, "Cos, do you have anything of the NBC5 KXAS news material?" And they said, "No, we don't have that." And the way I got to this was quite in a different way, because what happened was that I wasn't even talking to NBC5 or the Sixth Floor Museum. What happened was that the University of North Texas put a press release out, which is also a couple of years ago, and where they said that NBC5 was going to give all the KXAS material to the North Texas University for them to digitally scan them in, and so they would become part of their archive. All of their historic material. Well, that's what I thought, and that's what the press release said. Next thing I know, after exchanging a few emails, is that everything has been sent there, except, guess what? The JFK material. So the people at the North Texas University, they tell me, no, the Sixth Floor Museum has this. I thought, okay, but why? Why do they have this? But anyway, that's another question. So I contacted the Sixth Floor Museum and say, okay, do you have this material? And they say, no, you have to get in touch with NBC5 about this stuff. And I thought, but that's really odd, because they make the press release. They say it's going to the North Texas University. Then after a few questions and emails, I find out that that's not the case, and that it goes to the Sixth Floor Museum. And the Sixth Floor Museum goes like, no, we don't know anything about it. Now that's one bit. The other bit is the fact that the Darnell film, with the admittance by Gary Mack saying, we've got the first edition copy of this, first generation copy of this. And for some reason, they don't know about it since Gary Mack passed away, or they're not interested in finding out, or, because maybe his stuff has been put in boxes and nobody's took the time to actually go through it as such and such. They've been quite busy lately because there's been a lot of filming down Dealey Plaza for quite a few films and miniseries as such. Whatever it is, the bottom line is the Sixth Floor says we don't have it. So that's one thing. So I'm still trying to find out where these films are. And on top of that, which was quite a peculiar thing, that although it was known a couple of years ago, and it wasn't really discussed in depth at the education forum, but there was a obituary in early November about a guy called Charlie Briggs. Now, Charlie Briggs, he may not arouse any suspicion, but the difference is that in his obituary, it said that he was pretty much the number 3 in the CIA, and he was liaising and advising for the CIA and the setup of the Sixth Floor Museum in the late 80s. Now, think of this of what you may, but I find this strange that the CIA needs to be involved in the setup of the Sixth Floor Museum as such. To what extent and how much influence they have, I don't know. Is it about control of the media and the films as such? I don't know. But it's kind of odd as such. Chris Newton discussed this already with Gary Mack, and Mack's reply was that he didn't know what he did, nor did it matter. I don't know. Does it matter? I think it does, to an extent, definitely. So this brings us to the end of this film. I'm trying to look for the Weekman and the Darnell films more when this film is done. And on top of that, I'm going to work on the book and the second part of this movie, maybe condense all of it together. But this movie is already almost 90 minutes long, so it's going to be quite an epic thing. What I suggest is that you keep on checking out my work at the website, which is prayer-man.com, or check out my Twitter feed. PM is Lee Oswald, about Prayer Man and the shenanigans of the Texas School Book Depository. Thank you very much for listening and watching. I'll see you the next time.